maybe Ernie has some words of wisdom back there. That we can...
Speaking words of wisdom, Ernie the dinosaur.
Ernie got himself extinct. I'm not taking any advice from him.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's not his fault. There's just a freaking asteroid hit the Earth and extincted him.
The rest of his body's probably fueling AJ's car right now, so...
Welcome to Drunk Real Estate. Grab a drink and enjoy the show.
Hey there, welcome to episode 74 of Drunk Real Estate. I am Kyle Wilson, Ashley Wilson's husband, and I got the fearsome threesome, my three best friends back together, starting with Mr. Jay Scott. How's it going, Jay?
I'm doing great. It's a good week. Down 14 pounds on this diet that you forced me to go on. I'm a month in, so I'm happy about that.
I didn't force you to do anything. I tried to get you to do like a reciprocating diet with like metrics and tracking and penalties and all these things. And you're like, no, I don't want to do any of that. I'm just going to randomly send you my weight. And I just then send you back a thumbs up. That's the extent of our diet.
And I'm down 14 pounds, so it's working.
Well, that's all you need is the encouragement of thumbs up. Are you, you got some red wine then? Just because that's allowed on the diet.
That's the only thing I'm allowed to drink. So yeah, I actually went a little bit different this week. I'm going with the Petite Syrah from Sonoma, from the Sonoma part of Northern California, the Daredevil. And yeah, I haven't had anything on this show other than that Costco wine in like 3 months. So I'm excited.
Nice. Mauricio, how's it going, buddy?
I'm confused. I am totally confused because you always say that whoever shows up first gets introduced first. But today, you guys were last. AJ and I were first, but you didn't know that because you weren't here. So AJ should have gone first, then me, then Jay. But because you guys
actually, technically, you are right that Jay, but for some reason Jay is still at the top of my screen. But then it's AJ, and then it's you. So I should have gone AJ next. But AJ doesn't drink anything, so I feel like he just automatically has to go last. Like it's a bummer.
I'm drinking something fun. As most people know, Camus is one of my favorite producers, and there's a Camus Suisun Walking Fool. I think it's just a blend. I was gonna call it a cab. I think it's just a blended red, and it's actually pretty nice, pretty decent. So yeah. Check it out, The Walking Fool.
I appreciate, Mauricio, how you try your alcohol before the episode starts so you can comment on it, whether it's good or not. I appreciate that about you.
Well, appreciate that. It's all Gary V stuff. I get it from Gary V.
AJ, what's going on, man?
You know, I have had a great week. I'm very excited about our two topics today, like Christmas morning. And
both topics? Wow, AJ's usually he's excited about one topic, and you can kind of tell the other ones he's just like whatever. But to have you excited about two topics, I'm excited to hear AJ on this episode.
That means he's going to fall behind on his email because he's not going to be able to check email during the second topic.
Email's going to explode.
Awesome. Well, today I walked into my office, and next to my setup was this bottle of liquor. So apparently my wife uses my setup for her podcasts, and because I got a sweet setup, you can see it. It's awesome, right? And apparently it must have been like a real doozy because she must have, like, this was middle of the day, like 2:00 or something, and she must have been drinking because there was this bottle here. I didn't really recognize it. It's called like Clear. It's Clear rum. I tried it. It's excellent. It's very good. I'm going to mix it in with my my energy drink right now. But I don't know what podcast she did today, but she must have been a tough one because she was drinking alcohol apparently.
Yeah, I saw the podcast. I was at the pot. It was lame. It was awful. It was you needed to like really drink a whole bottle of wine to watch that podcast.
And if you're married to Kyle, you're going to be a day drinker.
Hey, we like to have fun here, Jay. Well, no. So what happened is Ashley was on Mauricio's Real Estate Syndicator Live today talking about what was it? Asset management?
Property due diligence. No, she did a killer job walking through kind of the steps to when you guys do your property due diligence. So you guys don't have the first idea how to do it. So she does all that stuff. So I brought her on and she crushed it, man. She added a ton of value to the community.
I got nothing to do with that. I just stand behind her while she does all the work and look pretty. That's my job. All right, should we get into this?
Let's do it.
It took us a little while. Everybody else on the planet has already talked about this, but we got around to it. And we're going to talk about the Trump tariffs. So there's been a lot of speculation around how Trump's policies will affect the economy, but probably the most hotly debated topic is around the tariffs that he promised to impose Depending on which statement you believe, the incoming president, we might see anywhere from 60 to 100% tariffs on Chinese goods and 10 to 20% on everything else. So the bond market obviously believes that these tariffs will be highly inflationary. But Jay, Trump wouldn't do something like that would just lead to more inflation right after we just beat inflation, right? Like, we're good.
So, well, let me start with a couple things. One, I don't think this is a highly debated topic here. I think most people agree with what I'm about to say. I don't know too many people that are knowledgeable on the topic that have a disagreement. Second is he going to do it? Who knows? I mean, if he's true to his word, he's absolutely going to do it. If he's not, if it's just a negotiating stance, he may not. And maybe this is just a way to put.
Well, we did see some tariffs last time, right? Like, it's not like he didn't impose any. He did impose some, but it wasn't anything to this extent.
Absolutely. And so it remains to be seen, but he has been known in the past to say things he's going to do, and they're just a negotiating tactic to put other countries on notice. And so I'm hopeful that's the case here. So, but let's jump in and talk about tariffs a little bit and what they are and how they work and what they likely mean if we have a big use of them here. So, I mean, at the end of the day, tariffs are just a tax. And as an example, if I'm a company that's importing goods to resell, so let's say I'm importing washing machines to sell in my washing machine store, and I import those washing machines from China. And let's say the president puts a tariff on washing machines imported from China. Every time I import a washing machine, I'm going to pay this tariff. So as the importer, I'm the one that pays this tax. I pay this tariff. We can even argue that because I'm paying this tariff at the point where the washing machine is coming into the country before I resell it, like just the point where I'm buying it, I'm paying this tax. We could argue, and I know there's been a lot of talk about taxes on unrealized gains. In a way, this is very much a tax on unrealized gains. So I'm buying something that I intend to resell for a gain at some point in the future, but I'm paying the tax on it now. And there's no other situation where, as a business owner, I'm paying a tax like this prior to generating some profit. So tariffs are a tax. In some ways, they're a tax on unrealized gain. So now that I've described it, there's basically three ways that tariffs play out, and we can talk about each as we go. But there are two that I think Trump likes to think are going to happen, and then there's a third, which is the thing that's more likely to happen. But what Trump expects to happen is one of these two. First, he expects that either businesses like me, my washing machine business, I'm going to stop importing washing machines because it's going to be too expensive for me to import washing machines. So instead, I'm going to look for domestic washing machine manufacturers. I'm going to look for companies that make washing machines here in the US, or I'm going to start making them myself. And great, there's nothing wrong with that in theory. But the reality is that the things that we import, a lot of the things that we import, we're not good at making in this country. And even if we can make them in this country, it's probably going to cost us more to make it domestically than it would to be buying it from a third party external country. So let's use the example of medicines. So we get a lot of our pharmaceuticals from China. And the reason we do that is because we don't have the infrastructure here to be making those pharmaceuticals. China does. Could we do it here? Absolutely. It would take a few years to start up. It would be expensive to start up. We'd have to hire a lot of people. Those people would charge more for their labor than people in China charge for their labor. So the price of that would go up. But in theory, I mean, we would probably see more domestic production, but the trade-off would be higher prices. And we've seen this before in this country back in the early 1930s. During the Great Depression, there was a tariff act called the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, where basically the government imposed
Bueller.
Exactly. The government imposed tariffs on about 20,000 imported goods. Most of them were food. And basically what it did was it destroyed farmers during the Great Depression because essentially they just couldn't compete. It became too expensive for them to import a lot of their food, and so a lot of those farmers suffered, and the country suffered. So number one is, in theory, we start doing a lot more domestic production of those things that we were otherwise importing, which means we're building up our local manufacturing, we're creating jobs for people, we're doing all these good things. But the reality is it's going to cost more to do it internally, domestically, than it does to just import these things. And so we're going to be spending more money when we go to Walmart or we go to the grocery store or wherever else it is.
Or Amazon. I mean, just to give you the example, I mean, there was a time, I don't think you guys know this, but I was actually at some point selling stuff on Amazon, and I would import them from China. So that would just be a tax that I would have to pay when I import the goods. I was actually selling wine openers, but if I bought a wine opener at wholesale prices and from Alibaba or something in China, then I would have to pay a tax, and then I would just pass that tax along to the consumer. Obviously, it's just a part of my cost of production. So even though I'm paying the tax on the front end, I'm then just passing it on to all the other. So, but it's not just Walmart; it's literally everything. Amazon, everything you buy would then that has Chinese imports or whatever the tariff is on would be affected.
Well, it's pretty easy to figure this out because like there are countries out there that have tariffs and blanket tariffs on a lot of imports on other things. So you can go out and you can look at. And I was listening to Mauricio's buddy George Gammon there. And he's in Colombia that has tariffs on all of imports. And he was looking at things like cars and iPhones, and like the price of an iPhone is 20% more in that country than it is to buy in the US or any other country in Europe. And so it's not hard. It's not like something like, oh, let's put tariffs on. We'll figure out, we'll experiment to see what happens. We know we can actually look at the effects of what tariffs have on the prices of consumer goods.
And keep in mind what those countries are doing, and we did the same thing here on numerous occasions. The probably the best example is back in the 80s when we put very large tariffs on cars coming from Japan. But we did that with a specific goal in mind. We did it as a trade barrier. We basically decided that, or when I say we, the government decided that we wanted to be a worldwide manufacturer, exporter of automobiles. We wanted to provide some barrier to getting cheap automobiles from Japan to give domestic manufacturers in Detroit the opportunity to catch up and to really take over as kind of the auto manufacturer of choice around the world. And to do that, to set up that trade barrier, we needed to install tariffs against Japan to make it really expensive to bring Japanese cars into the country. So the government decided that they wanted to do that to protect one particular industry in one particular case, and it worked really well. And so when you use tariffs with a strategic purpose, they're very targeted, they're not broad, you have a clear goal in mind, like a trade barrier. The timing is strategic. You don't say we're just going to leave it on forever. This is going to be a 5-year tariff or whatever. Then they can be really effective. But broad tariffs, which is what Trump's talking about, can very much have the opposite effect.
Here's my one problem with that. I'm all about protecting American industries, but just doing protectionist tariffs. So basically what we're explaining is, hey, we're going to put tariffs on other countries in certain industries just to protect our domestic productions. And here's my problem. And I'm glad you brought up that whole smoot whatever tariff policy from before, because you know what happened from that? That literally led to the development of the federal income tax. So before that, there was no federal income tax, but they figured out that tariffs don't work. And so the replacement of that was our current federal income tax. Now it's changed quite a bit over the years, but that's how federal income tax. And one of the main reasons they had to get rid of tariffs are corruption. So think about it. So if you're having to do tariffs just for protectionist strategies, just to say, okay, we want to protect certain industries, what's inevitably going to happen? Why did the steel industry last time Trump was in president, why did they all of a sudden get protectionist tariffs and not, I don't know, let's say rice or soybeans or something like that? Why did they get the protectionist? Well, most likely because there's a massive union with a big budget for political contributions, and we decided that industry needed to be protected and other ones didn't. So to me, the problem with picking and choosing that, we're going to just put tariffs on certain industries to protect American interests, that it's a slippery slope that we've already gone down and we know doesn't work. And so why would it work this time?
But that's not what we're doing, right? I want to make a point that kind of emphasize a point that Jay made, which is like any tax, again, tariffs or taxes. Taxes generally have multiple purposes or reasons for having. Like an income tax, for example, most people are like, yes, it has the effect of raising money for the government, but it's also, it allows the government to dictate or encourage people to do things. It affects behavior, right? And same thing with tariffs. You could use tariffs for protectionist, like, hey, I want to protect this industry, or we want to protect our local folks. Or, which I think is the case of the Trump tariff, you can use it for punishment. He's using this not to raise funds, not to protect a local industry. He's using this as a punishment, as a negotiating chip, I think, for when he starts dealing with China, whether it's the Taiwan or whatever else he's going to negotiate with. He's got this thing in his back pocket of a negotiating tool, because he's not here to protect anyone or raise capital. He's here to punish. And I think the goal of that is an important thing to look at.
Because one of the things, first of all, tariffs picking industries, everything else. The problem is this is a global stage. So first of all, nobody, I've never even heard anybody deny the fact that tariffs are inflationary, not even Trump or anybody else. That's not something they even hide. They look at it and say, tariffs, first of all, are used all around the world, and everybody's using it. So you have a problem. And that's that with the tariffs and how they're being used, it is a trade, right? So countries use it for protectionism, for doing other things, and they're shifting around global money and industry, and it can get very imbalanced. And so particularly with China, what's happened since the early 1990s is they have gotten away with just everything. And America's never done anything about it. It was like, well, we're getting cheap goods, so we just let them, right? And that has just escalated nonstop. And so what happens is all of a sudden we fight people economically today, right? Wars are fought by, frankly, smaller countries that don't have the ability to. We fight economically. And tariffs are used for a whole bunch of reasons. Like if you looked at the broad base, protecting domestic industry, encouraging domestic production, promoting job creation, revenue for the government, reducing trade deficits, encouraging independence, right? Environmental, social goals, and bargaining tools and trades. Personally, I think some of those don't work, but I think encouraging independence, that is something that we absolutely learned. We were in really bad shape through COVID. I think one of the best things we did, frankly, was we subsidized the chip industry. The government had to step in, and they had to because other countries were. And that's more of a national security issue. We cannot function without it. And so when you look at certain industries, there's ways that we can say the environmental abuse of this industry in this country is so bad. We are going to tariff you so high, you can't sell your products until you get this waste and this bad environmental stuff like under control. Or it is literally just, we're going to penalize you and we're going to encourage Mexico. So we've been doing a shift from China, which was also a natural shift due to wages and labors, to other countries like Mexico and the Philippines, right? And other countries as a way to offset political and economic danger.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. And so along with that, I mean, that kind of leads me into my number two reason for what we expect tariffs to do, or what we sometimes see tariffs do. And like you said, use it as a penalty. And I know Trump was expecting this back in his first term. He talked about this a lot. The expectation was that the exporter, let's use China as an example. I'm importing washing machines from China. The expectation is that the exporter is going to be forced to lower the price of those goods, because I'm not going to buy as much. And so if I say to China, I'm going to stop buying washing machines from you, I'm going to start building them here in the US or buying them from US manufacturers, China's going to say, oh, no, wait. We'll eat the tariff cost. We'll drop our price and we'll sell it to you cheaper. This actually works in some cases, but where this works is when the tariffs are placed on what we consider to be emerging market exporters. So smaller countries that are not quite as mature, who are starting to export things. They're desperate to get a foothold in the export market, the worldwide global export market, and they're willing to cut their margins really, really thin. They're willing to take small margins on these things just so they can say, hey, I'm exporting to the US and really start to build up their economy and build up their manufacturing. Those are the countries that will eat the costs of the tariffs, sell you things cheaper, and take a smaller profit. Countries like China aren't going to do that. Countries like China, one, we have this issue where China, it's starting to get more expensive. They're seeing inflation. They're seeing a reduction in their labor force, people not wanting to work. They're seeing the fact that they need to start paying people more. So it's costing more to import things from China because it costs more for them to manufacture things. Not only do they not want to eat these costs, but they can't. They just can't afford it anymore. They're too mature of an economy. And so China's not going to lower their prices. Worse, what they're going to do is they're going to put tariffs on us in retaliation. They're going to say, anything you want to import to us, we're going to charge tariffs as well, which means all the US manufacturers that are selling things into China now have to deal with all the things that we're dealing with here when we try and import.
And that's not speculation. That literally happened, right? Like when Trump came in and did all those tariffs last time. So I have a whole list of China, Turkey, Russia, and all of these countries imposed retaliation tariffs that absolutely crushed certain American industries.
The biggest one was agriculture back during Trump's first term. Farmers took a big hit because a large percentage, we don't realize this, but a large percentage of our food is imported. A lot of it comes from Mexico. Some of it comes from China. And when we put tariffs on these countries back during Trump's first term, it destroyed farmers. And so this is the second thing that in a perfect world, the tariffs are absorbed by the exporter. They lower their prices, and now suddenly we get this tax revenue, and we don't have to pay higher prices.
But they actually, though, the thing, though, is they actually worked. So in the Boston Consulting Group, the BCG, they put out their studies found that more than 90% of North American companies reallocated production and sourcing in just the last 5 years. So this is the end of 2023 and 2024. Between 2018 and 2022, the U.S. goods that were imported from China have declined by over 10%, while increased 18% from Mexico, 44% in India, and South Asian companies by 65%, and that was speeding up. So, like, we actually...
What else happened between 2022 and 2024 when it came to our economy? We saw massive inflation. So I'm not arguing. Yeah, we did. We stopped importing from China. We started importing from other countries. But when we have to make that choice that we're not importing from the cheapest supplier...
Tariffs didn't cause inflation.
Tariffs don't cause inflation?
They did not cause our inflation at 8+% in the United States. No, they did not.
Why do you say that?
Because it was the $4 trillion and the overspending by the government at levels we've never seen.
But you just said we stopped importing from China and we started importing. Why were we importing from China versus Mexico before 2018, 19, 20, 21? Because it was cheaper.
Yeah.
So when we have to import from someplace that is more expensive...
Tariffs are inflationary, but to say that the price increases and inflation that we saw in the last 2-3 years were caused by tariffs...
I don't think Jay's saying it was the main driver. He was saying it was a contributing factor.
Yeah,
though.
Of course. It like a fraction of a percent or something.
I mean, we are a real estate podcast, so we could draw like literal comparisons here, because if you remember the Trump tariffs before, some of the major ones were the steel, and then it was the lumber from Canada. And if you look at the cost of construction that happened last time that happened, it absolutely, like, I think so they did a study on just the lumber aspect of it, and that those tariffs alone added $6,000 to $10,000 to the cost of producing housing, just a medium priced house last time. So like it like adding these tariffs do directly affect even us as real estate investors and add to that inflation. And it showed last time.
Yeah, but and to go back to Jay's point, like in terms of, the importers making the decision that they're not going to buy or discouraging, at the end of the day, let's get back to our kind of economics 101. I mean, it's clear that tariffs, at the end of the day, the people that are paying the tariff ultimately are the consumers, right? Because that just gets passed on. In fact, I just found a study, some economists.
That was my number 3.
Yeah, so economist. Yeah, I'll steal it from you. So economists at the Bureau of Economic Research did the research on the last U.S.-China trade wars that happened during the Trump administration last time in 2018, and found that literally 100%. I was trying to figure out what percentage of the tariffs get passed on to the consumer, and it's literally 100%, at least from the ones from 2018. So at the end of the day, it just becomes a economics 101, supply and demand. Like if your washing machines increase in price, does that cause the consumer to say, hey, I'm not going to buy that washing machine because I can find it cheaper somewhere else, or maybe they're not price elastic? Or do they say, I know it's gone up 10%, but it's still cheaper than buying the one over here because that one's made in the US or made in another country, and so I'm still going to go buy this thing. So it's really the end consumer that dictates the behavior of whether they're going to continue doing it or not. And to your point, I think what's most likely happening is they will encourage production from other countries. Like you said, the United States just doesn't produce anything, but countries like Mexico and other lower labor places do. And so then again, it goes back to the US consumer. Will the US consumer continue buying even though you think it's an American brand, like I'm kind of, this is off the top of my head, but I'm guaranteeing you that the General Electrics of the world and the US companies, most of those parts come from China, even though they may be officially US companies, but they'll go to other places from parts or washing machines, to your example, from Mexico or Central America or the Philippines or wherever else. But ultimately, it's going to be the consumer that dictates the demand. The demand destruction is going to come from the end consumer.
Well, AJ started to talk about it. I guess it comes down to what's the purpose of the tariffs, right? Like if the purpose of the tariffs are that we're going to all of a sudden, like it's going to help the U.S. economy and we're going to get more tax revenue and we're going to, boost all those things, then I think what we're seeing is that's not going to be the case. The end consumer is going to be the one who pays for it, and the economy is going to pay for it in inflation, and that's just like. But if the goal is to bring more industries back to the U.S. or security or something like that, like AJ touched on the CHIPS Act, like how we're going to pay for it a different way. We're going to pay for it in subsidies, right? So we're going to get less tax revenue, but we're going to bring that manufacturing onshore. So if that's the goal, or if the final goal is as he brought up is as a punishment, then or economic warfare or something like that, then that's a different question. So I guess Trump has kind of acted like this is going to be a benefit to our economy. It's going to bring in more tax revenue. And if that's what he's going for, I guess that's where a lot of people are skeptical.
But I could make the argument not to defend tariffs, but I could make the argument that he is using the tariffs as a bargaining chip for other things. And so if that tariff allows him to go negotiate with China to, dissuade them from invading Taiwan, and therefore our chip production gets affected, then that's could theoretically help the U.S. economy if it's using it as a bargaining chip. But if it was just
how'd that theory work out, but preventing Russia from doing anything? No, we're gonna sanction you and tariff you. That really tanked the ruble.
That's a whole separate section. That's a different topic. We can talk about that one at some point too.
We can jump into it, but
AJ, you mentioned national security, but I mean that's one of the big national security concerns. It's no secret that China is looking towards Taiwan. There's been lots of rumors that they're at any point ready to go in there.
They're backing Russia. They're buying
and take back Taiwan. They think Taiwan is part of China and they want to take it back. And if that happens, and all of the chip manufacturing is happening in Taiwan, now suddenly all the chip manufacturers under the control of China, that's not good for the U.S. economy, as we saw last time. So is this a bargaining chip to fix that?
Yeah, there's a lot of conspiracy theories surrounding what's going on with Taiwan and the U.S.
Why is everything a conspiracy theory?
Here's the other thing to be concerned about. If we do massive across the board tariffs, basically what we're going to do is we're going to create a global trade war. And we're not going to win that global trade war. We talk a lot on this podcast about this thing called de-dollarization and the risk of other countries starting to trade in their own currencies and not using the dollar as much for local trades and local imports and exports. That's what we're going to start to see. We're going to start to see a lot of unilateral and bilateral trade agreements between these countries that we're tariffing. China's going to go talk to Japan and Taiwan and Russia and say, hey, let's just agree that we're going to trade amongst us. And if any of us are going to trade with the U.S., we're going to put massive tariffs on. So it's going to discourage anybody from trading with the U.S. And now suddenly all these countries have kind of gone and formed a club without us, and our exporters are getting hurt. People that want to import here are getting hurt, and the dollar is getting hurt because they're trading in local currencies potentially, and we've been cut out of the process.
Yeah, but how's that going so far?
Yeah, that's not the dollar's actually used more now today than it was before. We've actually increased the dollar the more that we've
Well,
actually
we haven't put massive tariffs on anybody yet. I'm saying if we start putting massive tariffs across the board, these countries are going to sign unilateral and bilateral trade agreements.
Yeah, but these countries still need loans. They still need to pay the loans. They still have debt service. They don't.
I'm not saying they're going to get rid of
the
the
global
dollar.
debt is increasing?
bypass
or
America.
decreasing?
They don't even have an economy.
I'm just saying they're not going to. It's going to hurt us.
It's a step in the wrong direction as far as de-dollarization, I think is what Jay is saying. Like it's one of those things that like everyone wants to point at one thing that's going to be the death of the dollar, and I think we all know it's not going to be one thing. It's going to be finally like the straw that breaks the camel's back, and each one of these things is one step in the wrong direction.
So I think the tariffs, like it's a counterbalancing act, which by the way, I'm not arguing for tariffs. I don't like tariffs. I think we should have way more free trade agreements and everything else. But I also can't change the fact that other countries use them whether we care or not. So like we can't control that. And we have been in an environment for the last 30 years that America has been so abused globally, where we allot and allow for everything from, you talk about tariffs, how much money we're printing, sending overseas, agreements they're not holding up to, China just getting a runaway ticket to do whatever it wants, and we haven't been holding their feet to the fire. And I think that hasn't been good at all. I mean, what China's done in the private sector alone, how they move over products, how they don't hold, it's crazy. And we've really just not done anything about it. And I think that does have to end. And it tends to
does
be
that end through tariffs though? Is that the answer to because I guess a lot of this talk
nukes, but I guess.
a lot of this talk was before when the concern was that China was such a growing economy that they're going to overtake the US and we're going to lose our position and yada yada yada, but like we're in a very different position right now where China's economy is struggling. They got a real estate crisis going on, and they got
what do you think tariffs are going to do to them?
Yeah, so like is that? Yeah, I get the conversation before, as you pointed at, like economic warfare and kind of just in order to position the U.S. in a good state geopolitically. But like right now, I guess, do we really need that against someone like China?
I think if it's not a fair balancing, like if we're allowing them to do things that we don't do and can't do, and we're getting charged for other things and giving them a free, basically pass at it, I think that's just why we don't need to. Why set the precedent? And things that they've openly defied, not only military aggression on Taiwan, but also they're trading with Russia. While we're sending our money over to Ukraine, they're sending all their money over, and we have this proxy war going on in Russia between us and China. Yeah, I think that's actually now's probably the time we should.
The same with the oil, right, AJ? I mean, the oil embargo, for example, they're still buying. I mean, Russia, they're still getting, everybody's still getting their stuff. They're just going around them and getting it through China.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I mean, it's quite. You want to talk about conspiracy theories? This has been proven, and the U.S. kind of just looks the other way, where Russia basically sells their oil to other countries who then sell to us. So it's like, hey, we're not going to buy from Russia, but really we're buying, like, we're really buying it from them. All right, well, we got to wrap this up. So Jay, you got any final points or?
Yeah. So here's my predictions. One, Mexico's the big winner in all of this. I think what we're going to see is that we're going to start doing a whole lot more trade with Mexico. They're going to become our primary exporter of choice over China in the next few years, and they're going to be the big winner out of all of this. Shorter term, I think I said this to you guys a couple weeks ago, but what I'm seeing these days, and I mean, when I'm saying what I'm saying, it's just I'm reading the news just like anybody else can. It's not like I have any inside knowledge. But there are a lot of companies out there who are already starting to to prepare for tariffs, whether they happen or not. So companies like Steve Madden Shoes have already moved production from China to other countries like Vietnam and Japan. And companies like Advanced Auto Parts, or AutoZone, maybe it was, has already said that they're going to be raising their prices in anticipation because they import most of their products. And a number of other countries have said they're going to be stocking up on inventory over the next several months because they're concerned that that things are going to get more expensive. And home builders are already saying that we can't lock in prices longer term, and they're buying a lot of inventory. So what I expect to happen is over the next month or two, I think we're going to see a spike in imports, basically just companies stocking up on inventory before tariffs or before the possibility of tariffs. Imports and exports have a major impact on GDP. And I think we're going to see a big spike in imports in November, which is going to lead to a big spike in GDP for this quarter, for Q4. And I also think it's going to lead to inflation over the next month or two. So I think once we see Q4 GDP numbers, we're going to see that they're a lot higher than we expected. Over the next couple of months, I think we're going to see higher inflation numbers than we expected. And then I think come Q1, when businesses, just like after COVID, when they stocked up, as soon as things opened up, we saw a huge drop in GDP, and we saw a negative quarter in GDP simply because imports stopped because the warehouses were full. I think Q1 is going to be a really bad quarter for GDP because I think importers are going to have full warehouses and they're not going to be importing in Q1. So
spell that out for me, though. The Q4 inflation, people stocking up on goods in anticipation, how would that lead to a higher inflation?
Sorry, that's a separate issue. I think there are going to be companies that prematurely raise prices in anticipation of tariffs. A lot of these companies have to buy inventory months in advance. And if they expect that they're going to be buying inventory today that they're not going to use till February, they're going to be raising prices today because they're going to have to offset.
So why is that? If they're buying the inventory today at non-tariff prices, why would they have to raise their prices if they don't use those till February?
Because they continually buy inventory. And so they're buying inventory through the tariffs. If they expect,
they're just trying to smooth it out, right? They're basically going to say we're going to make less money.
So the Trump tariffs actually hurt us really, really bad for this, because the steel, that's like for us building steel, obviously a huge issue. So the tariffs really hurt us during COVID, like bad. Yeah. It was really bad.
Yeah, we got, well, you remember lumber prices?
Yeah, lumber prices, but dude, that had way more to do with Canada. Steel prices, though, were really correlated with China. And when we looked at what was going on there, what we saw was what Jay's talking about. It was this balancing act where they were taking in stuff, but the prices were adjusting regardless of the inventory that they had purchased 6 months prior. So it didn't, they would obviously adjust prices as they're going up, regardless of what they got. And one of the main reasons is we don't know where the top is. We have to repurchase and rebuy. And also, frankly, they were trying to cut down the amount of people buying, because they were worried about their supply within the supply chain. And that caused a spiraling effect in prices. And it was actually really hard on our industry. And another thing that we just got affected, the Trump tariffs, just announcing them. I didn't buy a company because of them. I literally was under contract for a company. And when Trump got elected, the next week, we're like, yep, we're not buying you anymore, because the products were manufactured exclusively out of China, which that was the company's own fault. I don't know why they didn't have 2 or 3 backup ones. But regardless, we didn't close on the company. I walked away from it. Through due diligence, we tried to find out other ways. And I'm like, I'm not going to go through the work to get resuppliers, everything else. That's why I was buying the company anyways. And I walked away from the company.
Yeah, and I think you also backed out of the buying your third plane, I believe, from the tariffs. So you decided not to pull the trigger on that.
No, it makes sense for him to buy it now before the price of steel goes up, and lock in that price. I just remember, and yes, it was Canada, but that was, if you want to look at direct, people didn't want to say, oh, this was Trump it was Trump's fault. But last time Trump put tariffs on Canadian lumber imports, and then all of a sudden during COVID, they wanted to blame it on COVID, but it was directly after the tariffs came in, and we went from paying $12 a sheet to $48 a sheet for plywood. So hopefully that doesn't happen again. That wouldn't be nice for us real estate investors. All right, we ready to move on to some Elon Musk? Everyone loves to talk about Elon Musk, good or bad. So we got to sneak it into this podcast. He's the next hot button after Trump. So we got to get that that SEO, search engine optimization. Get Musk. So this week it was announced that Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead a new department titled the Department of Government Efficiency, otherwise known as DOGE. This department will provide advice and guidance from outside the government, and it intends to dismantle bureaucracy, cut regulation, and restructure agencies. So Musk previously said at a Trump rally that the federal budget could be reduced by at least $2 trillion. So AJ, my question is, should I be running out and buying Dogecoin right now?
All you can get, baby. Unlike tariffs, which suck and I don't like them, this I love. So hey, this has got me drooling. This is my jam.
You love the idea, but not the reality.
I think I will love the reality. Actually, how they have it placed out is everything that they've built out. I'm like, I really like this. So in fact, I think it's decades overdue. But to kind of put what it is and what it's not, the federal government as we know it today, I think there's a few things that a lot of people think agencies and how agencies work, that it's always been like that in the United States, which is absolutely not true. In fact, how agencies will regulate and enforce laws in the United States, that is fairly new. If you look back at the Administrative Procedure Act in 1946, you really had like kind of a kickoff of a lot of the stuff. But the Environmental Protection Agency in 1970, that is what really solidified government's reliance on agencies for not just regulation and enforcement, but specialized regulation. And what this change did was it dropped the the closeness to our voting members in the Senate and in Congress that are the representative of the people, and the agencies became bigger. They had more enforcement, more power, more leeway as Congress and as they tried to create ease, right, of doing this. Since that time, though, there's never been really anybody. They've just grown, and they've grown, and they've grown, and they've grown, and so is the budget. And as this has gone on, the United States has become riddled in bureaucracy and all sorts of stuff. So if you look at the federal government and its size alone, the size of the federal government is astronomical. And I did a few things, share my screen here with everybody so we could put this into perspective. So one of the things we did an outline to have any clue on like how this kind of looks and works. First of all, let's compare, or really, let's just take a look at this as far as states go. So if we look at the federal government, it has 2.9 million employees. Its revenues are roughly 5 billion. Its expenditures are 6.3 billion. It loses, or 14 billion. Hold on, sorry, pulling this up. When we look at the states, hold on here. You're seeing this, right? It just popped off my screen. So if we look at the federal government and then compare it to the United States, we have roughly 34 or 30, I guess that'd be 3 states that in the private sector have less employees than the federal government. And when you look at revenue, right, the revenue is not even comparable, obviously. And then even with the surplus and deficit, there's massive surpluses. All the states were positive in surplus when the government was massively negative. The point of that, though, being is when you look at the federal government's size and actually compare it to states, it is much larger than the vast majority of all states in the United States. as far as personnel that it pays, like actual employees, right? Revenue and expenditures, and yet its deficit is massive, right? And so the federal government, as it's grown and grown and grown, it's had a few problems. The first thing, though, that you look at is how the size of the government has changed. And the size of the government has changed over the past, what is it? I mean, since 1960, what I was talking about before, when the agencies, and we saw it right in the 60s, 70s. Well, we can look at an illustration of how it's grown since they made those changes. So if we share this here, so if we take a look at the U.S. debt, in particular to as we've gone on from this, the United States has exploded. So what happened is it got off the dollar standard, right? As it got off the dollar, or the gold standard, as it got off the gold standard, the economy was booming and it was growing, right? Really fast. Now, the government, too, along this, was also growing. The United States government, though, started to borrow astronomical sums of money like we'd never seen before, to a point that the U.S. added $12 trillion in debt just since 2020. And it had taken from the 1800s to 2008 to reach $12 trillion. The question becomes then, okay, this is obviously not sustainable. I don't think there's anybody that disagrees with that. But what are we supposed to do about it? Like, how are we supposed to attack it?
Jay Powell, Jay Powell, just as last week said, this is he's been saying it for a while. This is an unsustainable path. He said it's okay now, but it's unsustainable. We cannot continue to do this.
Yeah, we did in 4 years what we did in 1800 to 2008. Like, wild.
Well, the debate is like, what's the tipping point, right? Because
let's get to the real debate, though. AJ, address the main problem or the main issue. Which let me phrase it the way I think of it. But like, I get it. Like we were spending way too much money. We've grown the inflated the government way too much. But when you start giving folks, increased or free stuff, good luck getting that back. Because first of all, people have adjusted their way of life. They've taken a certain salary because they know they've got Social Security coming, or they know they got healthcare, they got Medicaid, they got this, they got that. It's very difficult, if not, I would say almost politically impossible, to then take that away from them, even though you agree that, hey, we ballooned a payment. Maybe the payment cost us $3,000 more, but we're only $800 of that is going to the person you're giving it to. Good luck taking that $800 away from the citizen. So how do you address that problem? Because most of this stuff is all mandatory spending that I don't know how you go about. Are you going to go cut, Medicaid? Is that the solution?
Well, like, this is kind of what their task is. And then we can talk about it and look, because you're exactly right. The subsidies, everything that's going on, it's gotten away. But two, this has one of the problems is this never ending, like we've lost checks and balances. And this never-ending just pay. Most of the people in Congress don't even know what we're spending things on, right, at all. So the idea is that we have an audit, essentially. We are reviewing cost-cutting. So the first objectives and goals, cost-cutting, waste elimination. So to look at everything from federal spending that results in high overhead but has poor yield, target duplication. It is a focus on the discretionary spending through, though, and what they want to do is agency restructuring, consider privatization, the use of technology, potential agency eliminations, which I'm going to show you some of that, which is mind-blowing. Like 400 agencies, what they spend, who they are, it's crazy, that nobody even knows about in the United States. Then you have the private sector principles, which I kind of liked and were pretty good, where basically a lot of these are checks and balances, not elimination, and how to optimize. So duplications, optimization, use of technology, taking best practices from the private sector, right? Implementing those. And it took a look at mandatory spending, discretionary spending, and interest on debt. So that's the focus, is on the discretionary spending, which represents 30%. The mandatory spending, which you're talking about, right, that's 62%. That's actually almost another discussion.
Are you saying
Because
it's
they're
30%?
focusing
Are
on
you
the
saying
30.
it's 30%, AJ? Because the number I pulled up was literally 1 trillion out of 6.7, which is like literally maybe not even 20%.
So let me clarify. In 2023, that number was 1.7 trillion for discretionary spending, split in half between defense spending, which was about 850 billion, and everything else, which was another 850 billion. So if we are not going to look at cutting defense spending, which I think you would be hard pressed to get any of our Congress to seriously consider that. Basically, what we're looking at here is $850 billion out of $6.7 trillion.
So it's in there. That is one of the things they look at.
But just because it says it's mandatory spending, like, doesn't mean that like it's actually mandatory. That's just I would use the word committed spending. Like, we've already committed to spending that, but we can uncommit to a lot of these things. And when Ramaswamy when they were like, they pushed him on his $2 trillion number, he quoted that there's actually 1,200 programs right now that no longer have government authorization, but they're still receiving money. So like, and that equates to, I think he said like over $500 billion of the budget.
Yeah.
So
and
like
a quarter of that is veterans benefits. So good luck just cutting veterans benefits and thinking anybody in Congress is going to get reelected just because.
oh, what about the other 3/4 though, I guess,
No,
is the
that's
idea.
the thing. You don't need to cut out $1 trillion to make this a great idea. Like,
Well, apparently you do. Apparently you need to cut out $2 trillion to balance the budget.
Well, okay, that number's just Elon Musk, and we know Elon Musk, his full self-driving has been 1 year away from being here for the last 5 years. So like, Elon Musk makes claims and then walks them back all the time. I don't think anyone's actually holding the feet to the fire that we're going to cut $2 trillion.
just in redundancies alone, a third party, this isn't, these guys, third party in redundancies alone outlined $200 billion. That is, we're spending that they're spending twice on.
AJ, can I put a graphic up real quick? So I decided to draw this myself because I couldn't find one that I kind of liked in the format that I wanted. But just to put this into context, and I don't mean to cut you off, but just for our viewers and those that can't see this, I'll talk through it. But basically, this was our 2023 actual government spending. And it's a bar graph, and it basically goes up to $6.1 trillion, which was what we spent in 2023. It was $6.75 trillion in 2024, but we're not done with 2024, so I stuck with 2023 numbers. It only gets worse in 2024. But what we see is that $6.1 trillion is the total federal deficit, or I'm sorry, total federal budget. Of that, mandatory spending is $3.8 trillion. We've got another trillion or so in debt, and then we've got about 1.7 trillion in discretionary. And so, if you can't see this, basically, I drew a line on here where our total revenue from the government is, and that's 4.4 trillion. And so, basically, if you cut every single piece of discretionary spending, which includes all the welfare programs, it includes all this Department of Defense stuff that we've been talking about. Department of Education stuff that we've been talking about. It includes all of this other redundant stuff that hasn't been funded officially for however long. If you cut all of that discretionary spending, and let's say you then cut all of the defense spending, we take every single penny away from defense. So we've now we've cut all of our discretionary spending. All we have left is the mandatory spending and the interest on national debt. We're still running a deficit of about $300 billion. So if we want to balance the budget, literally we'd have to cut all discretionary spending, which is never going to happen. Nobody's going to cut all of defense. Nobody's going to cut all of the discretionary spending. But let's say we did, you still have to cut $300 billion.
Yeah, but that's assuming that you're not tightening up mandatory spending at all. Like, that, just because it says mandatory doesn't mean that it's being spent efficiently.
Can everybody answer this question though? Here's a $1 million or $6.7 trillion question. Is it possible to cut Social Security and Medicare funds without cutting benefits? Because if you can do that, maybe. But if it results in cutting benefits to individuals, it's not going to happen. If you can say, look, if Elon Musk comes in there like he did with Twitter, cuts 2/3 of the staff and nothing happens, like everything else keeps running smoothly, then maybe. But that's the question on the table.
The company's worth a quarter what it was when he bought it.
Is it possible to cut the department's budget without cutting the benefits? Because if you can, then okay. But if you can't,
we had a whole episode on that a few weeks back. And
well, the thing is, though, it's like, first of all, this isn't. They're not going to balance the budget. They can't do that. That's not what they're
promising us that they're going to.
Well, the Trump administration wants to, but they can't.
Musk is saying we're going to cut $2 trillion and we're going to balance the budget.
Well, let's hope they can find it and do it. Because what they're trying to do, though, is cut the government spending and the machine. So at the end of the day, you cannot cut your way out of benefits, things like that, without reducing the machine. So the machine is a self-perpetuating organism because it has no checks and balances at this point. To put this in perspective, you can go through and find it's wild how many people are employed that don't actually need to be. The Department of Justice alone has like 200,000 people. Now, if you look at the redundancies and what these people do and the salaries of all of these mass people, it's wild. Go through the SEC alone.
But AJ, there's the argument against that is though that what's the total, like 3 million federal government employees, and even if they were all making $100,000, like that's like you couldn't fire all of them, and you're only at 300 billion.
That's not the point. It's what the machine creates that's the problem. The more people, the more agencies, the more people need money, the more they need to grow. So if you look at all the agencies and the growth, we had some agencies, which are the biggest ones, including that department, that grew like 39%. They wanted a $250 million increase. One agency. So the problem is the machine is self-perpetuating. You have to reduce. We have 400 agencies in the United States, of which are some of the craziest things you've ever heard of in your life that are taking hundreds of millions of dollars that nobody knows and nobody's even asking. And we have nobody's even looking at this stuff. So the problem is the machine is self-perpetuating at this point. Once they got away from Congress and the issuing of not only regulations, but also the administration of it, plus you can essentially fine people and you can prosecute everything else like that. You're getting away from the elected officials. They're getting big budgets, special interest, everything else, and they're just signing it. We have no transparency, which is one of the biggest parts of this, which is you're open sourcing, you're having transparency. You have all of these people. Once again, you're talking about more than 33 of these states, private sectors.
Can we touch on this transparency thing, because it is pretty funny. Like love or hate Elon Musk, he has some pretty entertaining comments and outlooks on these things. That so apparently this is his plan, and this is him quoting. So this isn't me just like guessing what he's saying. This is him. He said, "We will also have a leaderboard for the most insanely dumb spending of your tax dollars. This will be both extremely tragic and extremely entertaining." So he's going to post publicly how the government money is being spent, and he's going to put it on a leaderboard ranked by what is the dumbest. And then this seems like it's a petition to basically, because here's what's going to happen, right? We need to cut spending, but to Jay's point, people are never happy when spending is cut, right? There's always people who are going to be like, "Oh, don't cut this. This is mine. I've been used to this." Blah 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 blah. So he needs to get the public opinion to kind of be on their side. So this seems like to me, the whole transparency thing is their attempt at saying, okay, we're going to get the public on our side, seeing how ludicrous the spending is, and so they're going to allow us to make all these cuts.
Yeah, there's a lot of open sourcing and taking private sector and individual feedback in this, which is actually very fascinating. And how they're using AI too, when they look at it and say, how can we be transparent, but also not just transparency to just show, but drive solutions and do it quickly and efficiently. right? Because right now that obviously doesn't happen within the government. So how can we participate more in our government? Like, I think that's amazing. All of that is amazing that we can see and understand. And
Well,
that
they're kind of doing it in a roundabout way. I guess this is one of the issues with Trump is Trump doesn't really want to go through the normal channels and do things correctly, right? Because
the normal channels create the problem.
Well, so but there is certain things set up to protect us as a country, and what he's doing is he's creating an agency, but he doesn't feel like actually creating an agency, right? So he's kind of saying, "Oh, this is outside the government. This is he's pegging them as advisors." But whatever they're going to propose, he's going to try and enact, which the way he should be doing this is he should actually create an agency. And technically he has the House and the Senate and
create 401 agencies, pay all these people money to tell you.
Well, but you can set up a temporary agency. Like they already put an end date so they could say this agency.
There's nothing more. What is the saying? There's nothing more permanent than a government temporary.
Government. So more bureaucracy to solve the bureaucracy.
It blows my mind that you guys or anybody's actually taking this seriously. Let's start with the fact that we've created a Department of Efficiency that has 2 heads. What other government agency has 2 heads? That's super efficient right there. We have 2 heads. How about the fact that Elon Musk came out and said, we need people who are going to help us, and it's going to be unpaid. And if you want to submit your resume, by the way, you need a blue check mark on Twitter. You need to pay us $18 a month if you want to apply to come work for this organization for free. I mean, it blows my mind that everybody doesn't realize that this is just a cash grab from Elon Musk. Elon Musk, do you guys remember when Taylor Swift came out and said, hey, everybody should go vote? And all these people said, how can you listen to Taylor Swift? She's a billionaire who's out of touch with the people, and nobody should be listening to billionaires who don't understand what we are going through with the increase in prices and all of these things. And now everybody's cheering that the richest man in the world is talking about literally how he's going to cause the economy to implode. We're going to have hardship, and it's just something we're going to have to deal with.
I mean, that's a perspective.
Well, that's what he said. He said, if Trump gets elected, expect the economy to crash, expect the markets to go down, expect there to be, in his words, hardship. He said this. This is the richest guy in the world telling us you're going to just have to deal with hardship because that's what we have to deal with.
But why after having the status quo, not one, the Republicans or the Democrats, neither one are ever going to solve this. They won't. They'll never do it. They've proven to us over decades that not only will they not, they will print more money. And they will bloat our government more. The reason being is the structure.
This doesn't get solved with.
The point is, I think.
Stop. I want to hear AJ. What is Elon Musk going to do?
Yeah, so we can open it back up and we can go through every single point and key.
But no. I want to talk about tactically. He comes up with an idea. He's got the best idea in the world. What's he going to do with that idea?
Okay, so first, let's go
give it to Trump.
He's going to give it to Trump, and
what's Trump going to do with
something about it?
And what's Trump going to do with it?
Trump's going to
implement.
That's actually the biggest criticism of this whole thing, because something similar to this happened back in the 1980s. Reagan came up with some commission or something to do something similar. They write a memo to the president, and then the president can or cannot do it.
I think if they could save us $10 billion, it's worth it. I think if they could save us anything, it's worth it because we don't have to pay them. And 2, why not? If he could get it done, why would I have an issue with that? Because he's Elon Musk.
But how is he going to get? But no, that's my point. You say he's going to get. Okay, let me answer the question I asked. This is what's going to happen. Trump, Vivek and Elon are going to say we need to cut the Department of Education because we're wasting $153 billion. By the way, we're going to ignore the fact that even if you get rid of the Department of Education, that $153 billion already been earmarked and still has to be spent. So we're not saving that. It's impossible to save that because it's already been earmarked in budget. But let's pretend Elon says, let's get rid of the Department of Education. He goes to Trump. Trump says, this is a great idea. We need to get rid of the Department of Education. Oh, by the way, the Department of Education was legally created by Congress as an agency back in 1979. It can't go away without.
We have scored less and worse in the nation and gone down the toilet.
Just listen. He says we need to go to Congress, and Congress has to decide to abolish the Department of Education. How many votes does it take to abolish the Department of Education in the Senate?
60.
60. Supermajority. How many Republicans are in the Senate?
53.
53.
53.
Mhm.
How many Republicans are going to vote for this, let alone Democrats?
So let me get this straight. The idea, since we don't think they're going to vote for it, we shouldn't ever do anything about it. That is so ridiculous to me. The first thing is we're all talking about this. Nobody's talking about this before. This idea of transparency, leaderboard, everything, everybody should be
There's no
discussing.
transparency. That's ridiculous.
What okay, so you think any effort to try to get transparency and reducing cost is ridiculous just because it's Elon Musk? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes, 100%. I don't trust that the richest guy in the world spent $100 billion or $100 million to get Trump elected simply so that he can be altruistic.
Okay, so you have a problem with Trump and Elon, so you think they shouldn't try to make the government more efficient. And you shouldn't cut.
I think there is zero chance they're going to make the government more efficient. If anything, they're going to crash our economy. If they're successful, Elon Musk already said, if I'm successful, I'm going to crash the economy. Are you okay with that?
Yeah, I am. If we went into a recession,
so you're okay with the billionaire unilaterally deciding?
It's not unilaterally. What are you talking about? It's not unilaterally. We just talked about the checks and balances.
I mean, they're going to be proposals, and it can't just go into the next budget as well. And it's like it's not going to necessarily like we're not talking extremes, right? It's not like Elon's going to be like, you got to do this, and Trump's like, okay, we're doing this, and then like it's yes or no.
To have somebody actually going after this, that is like the best thing that I've heard in decades, because no one has taken it not only seriously. We don't have outside people. It's not a priority of anybody. So I don't care if it's Democrats. I wish the Democrats would have done this. I wish Biden would have said, we're going to get whoever and have somebody go after government spending and agencies, but they never would, right?
I mean, Jay's right, though. Logistically, this is a clusterfuck, to excuse my French. And whether or not like this should be an actual agency and it's not, does Trump have the power to enact any of this? Not really. We don't have enough votes in the Senate to do any of these major changes. But at the same time, like, does that necessarily mean the entire thing is a bad thing? Allowing someone to take a third-party look at government spending, posting, getting out to the public where we're spending this money, like, is that really a bad thing?
But why Elon Musk? Why not an economist or a group of economists or people that are actually trained?
Saying he'll do it. Nobody else stepped up.
I'll do it. I'll do it.
Go talk to him. I don't think
he won't let me because I don't have a blue check mark on Twitter. I have to pay him if I want to be a part of this. How do you not see that this is just a cash grab?
Okay, so
if he really cared about transparency, then why wouldn't he say just everybody's allowed to come and send me a resume and talk about? Why would he have to say you've got to be a blue check?
That part is obviously, Jay. That part is obviously a cash grab, but it doesn't just one.
And you think it ends, and you think it just happens to end there.
Okay, so you have a problem with it because it's Trump and Elon. Take them out. So take them out, and you're okay with it. But you just have a problem because it's Trump and Elon.
I have a problem that it's turned into a plutocracy. It's turned into very wealthy people deciding what should happen with the government when they have conflicts of interest. How much money does Tesla and SpaceX get from the government?
Did you just say wealthy people saying what to do in the government because they have conflict of interest? I'm sorry, I'm going to die. Are you kidding me?
So wait a second. So you agree that that's wrong, whether it's Congress or outside Congress?
That's literally how it's done.
But do you think it should be done that way?
Doesn't matter. It's how it is.
Stop for a second, Kyle. You just said it doesn't matter because what? We can't change it?
No, I hope we can, and I hope they'll get to it.
Why doesn't that matter?
It does matter if they can, and I hope they do.
But you just said it doesn't matter. I just said we shouldn't have very wealthy
right people. Now to have Elon Musk versus who? Literally, so go look at the administration of every single person that's come up. It's all Wall Street executives and pharmaceutical company people, every one of them, stacked. Literally, what we're talking about, Jay, you're saying you don't want a rich person to run the government.
No, I don't want an unqualified person to run it.
Versus who?
Versus somebody who's qualified.
Did you see the last administration? Who in the government, Jay, is qualified. It is ran by the stupidest people on earth. Our government is ran by the stupidest people on earth. Look at
and you don't want to. I'm saying we need to change that.
Yeah,
isn't that the reason we voted for Trump? Because he hires the best people?
We voted him to gut the government if he can. At least try.
I mean, it doesn't matter who we bring in. I guess to the point is, it doesn't matter who we bring in. There's going to be faults to him. So, if you say not Elon, not Vivek, like who's he going to be?
I want somebody that doesn't have the conflicts of interest.
Anyone's going to have a conflict of interest.
Let's bring in the Clintons. Let's bring in the Clintons then. No conflict.
Yeah, let's
bring in the Clintons.
Please tell me one person in the last 3 administrations that have not had not only a conflict of interest.
I'm not saying we bring in somebody that's been in one of the last administrations. I'm saying we bring in somebody that hasn't been.
Yeah, but anybody you bring in that's going to be qualified should be rich.
I think I'm as qualified as Elon Musk. Why is that funny? Because is he in a wait a second. So you're saying because he's a successful tech guy?
That's really funny, Jay.
You're saying because he's a successful tech guy,
endless companies, and he has hundreds of thousands, millions of employees, and he has actually done incredible things. Definitely more qualified.
He's done incredible tech things.
What about the boring company?
Okay, well, Taylor Swift has done amazing musical things. Is she qualified?
Well, she doesn't run companies.
She's not asking it.
But we're not running companies. This is the government. This isn't a company.
Well, but that's the idea is that they want to bring in, they want to go outside the government the way the government has been traditionally run, and they want to bring in private sector company ideas of how private sector efficiencies on major trillion-dollar companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let's do a prediction. How much is Elon Musk's net worth going to go up during this administration?
A lot.
How much?
Double,
absolutely.
It'll double.
It'll double.
Like all the
do
other.
You think any of that? Do you think any of that will be a result of benefits he's gotten from this revised government?
Just like every other billionaire. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Trump's going to be very good for billionaires.
Or how about the government officials that are all now worth hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, and they didn't even do anything? They just
agree. Isn't that a bad thing? Why are you a proponent for it?
So who do we do, Jay? So we all agree. The point is, we all agree that the government spending is out of control. We all agree there's probably somewhere in there where it's being extremely inefficient. AJ has pointed out numerous places where it's inefficient. There's doubling up. There's all these things going on. It needs to change. So who do we bring in to fix it, I guess is the point.
Nobody's volunteering. Nobody's asking. Nobody's even tried to create a plan. Nobody. But because Elon Musk did, you have a problem with it.
My problem is the conflict of interest. Elon Musk is already so they're already talking about cutting EV tax credits. They're already talking about putting in somebody that
which is hilarious, by the way.
What was that?
Which is hilarious, by the way.
But it'll be the best thing. But it'll be the best thing to happen because he wants to cut oil and gas subsidies. Also, it'll be the best thing to happen to Tesla in the last decade.
Yeah, well, it's gonna knock out his competition.
And he's putting in Elon Musk said 3 months ago who he wanted for his FCC chairman, who just got nominated as the FCC chairman. What do you think that FCC chairman is a proponent of? Rolling out Starlink across the country and giving hundreds of billions of dollars to Starlink. Do you think it's just a coincidence?
When you read through their actual plan and which problem did you have? Which page?
My problem is the person in charge of the plan.
You don't even know what they're going to do, Jay. You're so blinded because it's Elon Musk. You've never even read it, and you're sitting here going, it's the worst idea ever. You've never even looked at it, Jay, but because it's Elon Musk, you don't care. It doesn't matter. You don't want it. Don't change the government. It's Elon Musk.
No, I'm not saying don't change the government. I'm saying put somebody in that's not going to...
What's wrong with their plan, Jay?
Well, so that's
here's what's wrong with the thing that's wrong with it is the stuff that's not written down there.
Yeah.
What's not written down? Tell me what you didn't see in the plan that you didn't like.
The fact that the FCC commissioner that Elon Musk once installed is going to give hundreds of billions of dollars to Starlink. Is that written down there? Is that written in there?
Yeah, the FCC is written in here.
Okay, well, tell me if it involves him getting hundreds of billions of dollars in subsidies from the government.
The FCC guy or Elon Musk?
Elon Musk from the FCC guy that he wanted.
I mean, I guess, and that's why I have no problem with the concept or any of the ideas with here. I have the problem that I have with it is that he's literally like purposely trying to subvert the typical path that you would implement these changes. Typically, if you want to create an agency that does this, you have to go through the proper chains of government, and he's purposely setting this up so that he doesn't have to appoint somebody who has to. Usually, when you appoint someone to run, just let me finish, AJ. Usually, when you want to create one of these, this is a de facto agency. You have to appoint. The president does get the choice to appoint who's the head of it, but then that has to pass through the proper channels, through Congress and Senate, and they have to be confirmed. But they do have both the Senate and they have both channels right now, so they technically should get some done. It would just take time, right?
Technically, they were supposed to get rid of Obamacare, but that didn't work out very well.
Well, I don't know. It might be a little bit of both, but to Jay's point, I don't think if he puts up as the head of a new government agency, Elon Musk, I don't think Elon Musk is getting confirmed to any of this because of all those conflicts, because of all these different reasons that he's bringing up. So to me, a big reason why they're going and doing this outside the government and touting it as a good thing that it's outside the government is just to avoid those questions, that scrutiny, and those conflicts.
So then let me ask you a question. They're not using the proper channels. How do they get it approved?
Well, so what they're basically, they don't need approval. The way they're setting it up is what they're going to do is this is going to be just an advisory committee who they make suggestions, and the proper channels are the ones who decide who to implement them. So they're kind of just subverting the whole idea.
We want a third party. We're all okay with that. We want economist or something like that to talk about the bureaucracy, everything else. No one's suggested or ever made a plan for it. And we want them to go through the proper channels, not like them, even though they still have to. So a third party, we're all okay with. They have to use the proper channels. There's no way they can avoid it, right? All they're doing is giving suggestions. They're looking at all the data. They're going to open it up. They want to show it. Then it has to go through the proper channels. But we just don't like it because it's Elon Musk. And
why do they need to set something up to give suggestions?
They're a de facto agency, AJ. They're just going through. They're a de facto agency is basically they are coming up with these are what the government should do and telling the government to do this, and the government is enacting it, which is an agency. And actually, I think it's very short-sighted, to be honest, because if they went through the proper channels and created the agency, they're not going to be there's no real risk. There's it's America. You could sue for anything, but the risk of lawsuits coming from this are a lot less versus when they go through this, government, if they start firing employees, you don't think that half of the lawyers out there are just going to be calling up all of these freshly fired employees trying to create a class action lawsuit against this Department of Government Efficiency and the whole process, and that's.
We didn't even talk about the fact that you can't. So government employees are not at-will employees like private employees are. You can't just fire government employees.
They have an agency for that protects employees, and it's funded a lot of money, a whole agency only to protect and make sure that government employees can't get fired.
Exactly. And so basically, if you try to do it, the government's going to be wrapped up in lawsuits for the next decade. And so my point here is that this is what's going to end up happening. Elon Musk is going to come back in 6 months, 12 months and say, can't do this. Nothing can be done here, and nothing's going to get done. If something does get done, it's not going to be good stuff. It's going to hurt the economy. And he's also going to walk away with a net worth twice as high as what it is today.
Well, Jim, but you did mention something interesting for the next decade. So the point is they could start firing and they could start cutting and they could do all these things, and then all these lawsuits happen, and they got to work all the way up the chain, all the way up to the Supreme Court. And how long does that take? At least 4 years. And what's happened in 4 years? They're gone.
They can, like we've already said, they can make suggestions.
But
So-
why do you need a separate organization to make suggestions?
I think we're starting to go a little bit around in circles. But I mean, ultimately, if the end result, for me, and here's my conclusion. And Kyle, it's you're in charge here, so take charge at some point. Do your job at some point.
I know. I'm loving this. That AJ is the one fighting with Jay.
But like at some point, I personally, this is a personal opinion, I would be happy if they were able to highlight some of the inefficiencies so that at least it stopped growing. If nothing else, we stopped hiring at this ridiculous pace. We just stopped and we just like got it under control, and we didn't even if we disinflated it, like it didn't even go down. It just, the rate of increase went down. It would be a positive, because right now it's just going crazy, where theoretically in peacetime, what's our deficit these days? I don't know, $1 trillion every 100 days, whatever it is, like 3 trillion, like our budget 6.7. We only take in we only have a $3 trillion money, and we're spending 6.7. Like and it's good. Like we're not even in war. It's not like we're getting invaded by something. So if we could just get it under control, and if any of this happens, I don't see the harm in it. I think realistically, $2 trillion is a pipe dream. Whether it's going to be but to AJ, to your point, if it ends up being 200 billion, 10% of that, great. Or if it becomes zero and it just doesn't increase, I'd be happy.
All right. Well, so Mauricio is right, though. We do have to kind of wrap this up, but I'm gonna do this like a debate. So I think, first of all, no one disagrees that the government spends too much and we need to make it more efficient. I don't think Jay's disagreeing. I don't think Mauricio's disagreeing. We're all in agreement there. I don't think any of us are going to disagree that having a little transparency into where our tax dollars are going is a good thing as well. I think the disagreement is, okay, how is this going about? So I'm going to start with Jay. I'm going to put 2 minutes on the clock, sum up your argument on why this is a bad idea, and maybe propose a better idea. So Jay, I'm 2 minutes on the clock. Go ahead.
I think it's a bad idea because the person or people put in charge have a major conflict of interest. And my concern is that they are going to end up enriching themselves at the expense of making good decisions for the American people. And that's what a conflict of interest is. They're going to be in situations where they have to choose, I make money or I do what's good for the American people. And do I trust that Elon Musk, if he's put in a position where he has to choose between him making money or the American people doing well, that he's going to make the right decision there? And by the right decision, I mean the American people. I don't believe he will. And if I need no other evidence, it's the fact that literally he thinks that getting input is so important, but you got to have a blue check mark just to submit your resume. You got to pay him $16 or $18 a month just to submit your resume. That's bullshit.
Fair. AJ, what do you got?
I'm open to anyone or any suggestions that want to happen in alternative plans. We don't have any. There's nobody else. There's nothing else. So the one shot that we have, and two, if we go back to their plan, the breakdown of administrative costs at 30%, the double payments alone and the double expenditures that they've analyzed, which is over $200 billion, the wasted expense, the inefficiencies, the list of the third parties that they've already contracted out with and are helping them go through the feasibility and implementation and getting it passed through. I think the transparency and accountability on their side to roll out more of this, so we're actually all talking about doing it. I think all of those are good ideas. I think they can't do it unilaterally, but as of right now, we don't have another option, so why would I care what option we have? There is no other one. No one else.
What does that mean there's no other there's any option we want?
Jay, I don't know if AJ was done. AJ, let's finish up.
If there's another option, I haven't heard of one or seen one because I don't know who it is. So
literally, Elon Musk is our last. He's the great hope, and if it's not for him, there's no other options on the planet.
Who? Jay, like you say it like there's somebody else. Like I don't know.
I don't think AJ's saying there's no other option. And this I'm going to use this as the last point. He's saying is that this option's better than no option. Is basically this is Trump. Trump has the idea that we need to make the government more efficient. We need to create a task force. I'll call it more than a government agency or a department. Obviously calling it a department, I think, was a risky thing. I think it was just Musk trying to spell out DOGE, because a department really implies it is an agency. But the fact that Trump is the one who gets to pick who runs it. We can't pick who runs it. We don't get to vote in who runs it, and he picked Musk. And I guess the idea is that having Musk run this Department of Government Efficiency is better than having no Department of Government Efficiency at all.
And the crazy thing is that we believe that those are the only two options. That Trump doesn't.
Jay, I can pick a million more options, but you can't. I can't. We can't.
We can't affect that. It's the same.
But Trump can.
Trump can, but he's not going to, Jay. The point is that we were given as choices for president, Harris and Trump. Are they the best two choices in America? No. But those were the options that we were given, and we have to deal with those options. And is it better to pick one option than no option? That's the whole thing of people saying like, oh, I'm not going to vote at all. Well, then you don't get to pick between the two. Those are the choices we get to pick, and it's either have it or not have it.
This is the last thing I'm going to say or ask. What do you think Elon Musk's motivation with taking this position is?
Jay, I agree.
No, don't say it. I want you to say it.
Of course, there's going to be conflicts of interest. Whenever anyone enters into any agreement, there's no absolutely,
find me a saint.
Gandhi.
Okay, so we're all in agreement that he's taking the position to enrich himself.
No, I didn't say
that's
that.
all I have to say.
No, we're not saying that that's going to be just because he's going to enrich himself along the process doesn't mean he's not going to make good decisions as well. So, that's an assumption. AJ's trying to look on the brighter side that this is better than anything we've had, and Jay's
I actually like their plan. Their documentation, their plan. I think it's.
I'm on the side of this is better than nothing. At least it's. And if he puts out some tracker leaderboard of what the dumbest spending is, hey, that's better than what we had before. So
if our deficit doesn't increase over the next 4 years, even if we're still running $2 trillion, if it doesn't go higher than $2 trillion over the next 4 years, I'll consider it a win.
You better come back and grovel to AJ if that happens.
I don't even care about that. Once again, you just save us $100 billion, and I'm happy.
It would just be great podcasting if that happened. All right, let's move on.
Wait, Mauricio, you didn't skip Mauricio.
I don't get 2 minutes. It's like Jay takes up all the time, and so Mauricio gets cut out of the 2 minutes. Is that how it works?
Mauricio, do you want your 2 minutes? I'm
going to use up my 2 minutes. I'm just going to promote all of my stuff, my conflicts of interest. I'm going to use this 2 minutes to promote all of my stuff. No, I wanted to rebut. It's a debate. I want to do three quick points. Number one, even if 100,000 people wanted to apply for this job, $18 is $1.8 million. I think that's less than he makes in a minute. So I don't think that's really a big monetary move. Number two, I like
Jay, don't cut in.
I like the idea. I just realistically, I just don't see him being able to cut Social Security or defense or net interest on the debt or Medicaid or all the other mandatory. Like he literally has $1 trillion is if he cut 100% of what we could. So I think, but to AJ's point, if he can cut 10 billion, that's better than nothing. And then the last thing I'll take this opportunity to, because I don't think we've talked about the analogy too much, but we talked about like Elon Musk saying we've got to go through pain and all that stuff. I've heard this great analogy many, many times, and I like it. And that is the analogy of the heroin addict. Like if you're a heroin addict and you've been given drugs all of your life, at some point, in order for you to get better, you have to go through withdrawals. You have to go through the process of feeling like crap in order to get better and go to the other side. And that's what people are describing our U.S. economy. We've been on this heroin, drug, alcohol, whatever you want to call it. And in order for us to get better, there's going to have to be pain. It's the only way it can work. And if you think you can get through this without pain, you're living in la la land. You are a heroin addict. You're an alcoholic. You have to go through withdrawals in order to then show up on the other side.
I think that's a Peter Schiff analogy, right? He uses the heroin addict
all the time. From somebody else, but yes, he talks about it a lot.
Yeah, but and just to back up Jay on that though, we're going to go through pain, except Elon's probably going to be fine. All right, we'll move on to the top 10. Top 10, I'm just going to breeze through this because after that debate, this is not interesting.
You have the top 10 of the most ridiculous spending the U.S. government has?
I should have done that. if I had foreseen how lively this debate was going to be. But I was just going to try and make the point that tariffs are not across the world, are not like it's not a novel thing. Like, it actually happens, and there are quite a few countries that impose tariffs on other countries, and they're pretty high. So I was just going to go through the top 10 highest countries with tariffs that have on tariffs and imports. So number 10 or number 1. Actually, I'll start with number 10 just to get us excited. New Guinea, 15. Chad, 16. African Republic, 16. Fiji, 16. Cayman Islands, 16. The Bahamas, 17. Djibouti, that was kind of one of the reasons I wanted to say it. Djibouti, 17.8. Belize, which I like to just point out, Mauricio loves him some Belize. Belize, though, has 18.7% tariffs on their imports. And then finally, number 1 is Bermuda, 24.1% tariffs on all of their imports.
Bahamas, come on, pretty mama, Ilago.
we went through before, so we still do have tariffs on things like steel and a lot of things carried over from Trump, as Trump liked to point out during his last election speeches, that Biden didn't get rid of most of the tariffs that Trump put in. He left a lot of them in, and some of them he even brought up. So overall, though, if you average it all out, currently the U.S. has 1.47% tariffs on imports. So quick game. Oh, you know what?
It makes
I'm
up
going to switch this up.
15% of the federal revenue, which is also higher than income tax and payroll tax.
Hey, by the way, you can say I hate Elon Musk, but if you're looking at my screen right now, you will see posted above my door is a picture of, well, I got rid of it, but my Tesla. So
Tesla's
I am not.
a piece of crap.
Are you in college? Are you like a college kid that puts posters of their cars on their walls, on your door?
Don't go there, AJ. Teslas are awesome, by the way.
Teslas are crap.
Teslas are awesome.
Have you ever driven one, AJ?
I've driven one. They're kind of cool, but not my thing.
Even just look at the straight speed to price ratio. Speed to price ratio of a Tesla, and you can't find it anywhere. I grew up loving like muscle cars, and I because they were fast, and I loved the horsepower and the torque on them. And I drove in a Tesla for the first time. I'm like, Jesus, like I
was shocked at their giddy up. That is
favorite car I've ever driven.
Yeah, I have 2, so I'm a little biased. I sold my old Jeep Wrangler. I missed that thing a little bit just on summer days, but now we have 2. Jay,
I wish Elon would spend his days working on full self-driving as opposed to government.
It's pretty close, actually. Every once in a while, I let my car drive me around, and it's kind of fun. Jay, I'm going to let you do the game because you proposed one. I just thought of this. You proposed one the other day into the chat, and it was kind of funny, and I think you deserve it based off of the debate last time. So do you want to intro this one?
I don't even know what you're talking about.
So it was the what? How much was it? $10 million? You're given $10 million.
Oh.
And you kick Elon Musk in the nuts. But he can't come after you legally. He can't come after you like you don't get charged legally. He can't come after you civilly. But Elon Musk knows who you are and knows that you just kicked him in the nuts. So are you taking?
I answered that.
I think it's 100 million. You get 100 million of Elon's money, and you get to kick him in the balls. But he sees you do it. He knows who you are. He has your name and address.
I would kick him so hard, so many times, he would never. They would fall off.
I don't kick him.
Yeah, the argument is he's just going to ruin your life.
Just after every time.
I take the money, I give half of it back to him and say I'm sorry, and hopefully he doesn't send assassins. Hopefully he doesn't send assassins after me, and I get to keep 50 million.
You think he would just let it go if you gave him like 50 million back? That's like a Subway sandwich to him. Like it's the principle to him. He would ruin your life and everyone you know.
I would not care in the least. I would kick him so hard, so fast. I wouldn't even think about it.
You could hire like Secret Service protection from that time on.
I would call all my friends. I'd have you guys here. I could fly you here, and I'd be like, everybody take turns.
You guys are missing the point here. The point isn't he isn't going to come after you physically. He's not going to like physically hurt you. Just think about every business that you invest in, every single like
take them all.
thing that you like. He would look up. He would figure out like bar down investments would be done.
Oh, I don't care about that. I've got $100 million. That's in U.S. Treasuries.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, do you know what the yield on U.S. Treasuries is right now?
Like he would figure out like
my $4 million a year.
Like everything, everything that you've ever like tried and loved, like he would figure that out and he would ruin it.
How many people? How many? But you weren't. Again, not to be the lawyer, but how many people are actually doing this? Because if there's like 100,000 people kick him in the nuts, he's not going to remember who you are.
No, there's just one.
Yeah,
you're the only one.
You're just one.
But my theory is he'd respect it.
No, my theory originally was I would just say, look, Elon, I'm going to give 75% of this to your charity of choice. So you were doing it for charity. But then I realized he actually talked about this not too long ago, like $100 million. It's about his hourly. It's like about its hourly rate. Like it's like literally like for you and me to like, it's nothing. So he was talking about the cost it costs him to sleep because he makes so much money per hour that his productivity. But anyway, yeah, I'd still do it, but.
Like he would, in $100 million, he would spend $500 million just to get back at you.
Absolutely.
Well, I don't know if the listenership of this podcast mirrors my Facebook feed, but I've got a lot of Elon fanboys in my Facebook feed, so I suspect we could get some interesting comments on this.
Here's my theory: I tell everyone I'm going to do it. And I get up to the moment right before and I look Elon in the eye and I say, I'm not going to do this. I respect you too much. And then you're on his radar and that what you gain from not kicking him in the nuts is going to be worth way more than $100 million. All right, but we do have to wrap this up. Mauricio, I mean, I can't pick between the two. So you got to go first. Give us your plug.
I've been starting to do. I've done a couple of consultations, some asset protection consultations for the Legal Strategies for Everyone book. If you buy a bulk 25 books, I spent about an hour with you looking over your schematic, looking over your asset protection plan, putting a plan together. Just got to buy 25 bulk buys on Amazon. Legal Strategies for Everyone is the book.
And an hour of Mauricio's, I don't know what Mauricio charges for an hour, but I just got quoted for a contract law lawyer, $1,400 an hour. So buying 25 books in bulk, I know it's a deal. So
and trust me, I make like $1.50 per book. So it's not for the book revenue that I'm doing it for.
AJ, what do you got for a plug?
So go check out my YouTube channel. We've been working on that, and I go a lot more in depth on a lot of this data and stuff that we try to talk about and give out that we spend a lot of time at the firm putting together. But you can see a lot of more of the actual charts, graphs, information. So go to check out my YouTube.
Jay, what do you got to plug?
My wife told me over the weekend that I've been grumpy the last few months, and so I feel bad for the yelling at AJ there in that debate. I was probably louder than I should have been, so I'm going to plug
Oh, that's nice.
Growing Wealth in Self-Storage 2.0, AJ's book.
The love.
Run out and grab it. Mine's not signed for some reason. Why is mine not signed?
Seriously.
That's because you paid for it. Jay, you actually supported your friend and probably bought it on Amazon. So there you go. That's what I did too. Mine's not signed either. So I supported my friend by buying it on Amazon. I think we left a review and everything. So they could, that's what you did.
I did.
Yeah. All right, I'm going to plug my wife, Badass Investor, plug our company, Bar Down Investments, because apparently it's going to be gone in a couple months because Jay's kicking Elon Musk in the nuts and he's going to shut down our company. So swan song for Bar Down Investments. My wife's businesses are all going to be ruined because she partners with Jay on all of them. So go check her out. Maybe she'll be an Instagram star from now on, and Jay can't touch that part. So check her out, Badass Investor.
Elon, I love you. I just don't like you for the job. Don't kill me.
We know he's an avid listener, so that's a good hedge there. All right, let's wrap this up. I don't know if we're going to do the next week's Thanksgiving, so you might have to hold off. I don't know if we're going to do an episode next week, but pay attention, keep an eye out. If we don't, we'll be back the week after. Love hanging out with you guys, especially when you argue. I love seeing it. We ran a little long, but I think it was good. I was being entertained. I think Mauricio was entertained too. So we hope the audience is. But my drink's been gone for about half hour, and I really got to go hit the head. So hopefully I'll see you next Tuesday.
Later.
See you guys.